In April of 1968, the original Planet of the Apes movie was released to critical praise and made a killing at the box office. Not only that, but it delivered arguably the most iconic twist ending in cinematic history. Not long after, we unsurprisingly got the fast-tracked 1970 sequel, Beneath the Planet of the Apes. That was produced on a greatly reduced budget, but still managed to make a pretty penny for the studio. This inevitably led to not one, not two, but 3 consecutive sequels across the next 3 years in Escape, Conquest, and Battle. Each was made on a paper-thin budget, and each saw middling to negative reviews with diminishing box office returns. With Battle being the last straw, the franchise was put on ice in terms of theatrical releases for nearly 30 years. In 2001, we got Tim Burton's abysmal Reboot that was panned by critics and had its sequel plans shelved. But that isn't the subject of today's video, as the studio then decided to give the franchise another decade off before releasing Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which was a resounding success. Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video, I will be discussing how the Planet of the Apes trilogy starter, Rise, should be the shining example for how to reboot a franchise in a faithful, successful, and downright perfect way. Before we jump into the video itself, I just wanted to let you all know that I have playlists dedicated to every single type of video I do. Whether you enjoy rankings, top 10s, versus videos, I have it all, and it is perfectly labeled and laid out for you to enjoy, so be sure to check those out, and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And so, without further ado, let's hop right into things. The first thing we need to get out of the way is, what exactly do I mean when I say a reboot? What is a reboot? Many people, and rightfully so, get the terms remake, reboot, and reimagining mixed up. So let's try and clear the air a little here. For this video, a reboot will be defined as a course correction done with the purpose of restarting a franchise. A reset where fealty to the original story or film is not a priority, but usually shares elements with the originals, often done with the purpose of creating a new continuity with sequels, spin-offs, or prequels also in mind. Now, claiming that something is perfect is a bold statement. What exactly should the criteria be for a perfect reboot? In my mind, a perfect, or even just a good, reboot should have something worthwhile to say about the original. Maybe it critiques the original, or builds on it, or explores new subjects that the original did not, or maybe could not at the time. It should strive to achieve some level of defamiliarization, which means it should allow us to see something familiar but from a new angle, as if for the very first time. In other words, it should pay homage or respect to what came before, but provide us with something new, whether that's fresh twists, modern ideas or themes, or a general new approach and direction to move forward with. So this brings us back, now finally, to Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the beginning of the rebooted Planet of the Apes trilogy, and now franchise, I guess. I'll only be focusing on Rise today, however, as the subject is how to successfully or perfectly reboot a franchise, or just how Rise is a perfect reboot. Rise of the Planet of the Apes was released in August of 2011. It was directed by Rupert Wyatt, written by Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver, and stars James Franco, Frida Pinto, John Lithgow, and Andy Serkis as Caesar. The movie follows a scientist, Will Rodman, played by Franco, working for a large corporation trying to develop a cure for Alzheimer's disease. Naturally, they are testing these new drugs, among various other things, on animals. Primarily, you guessed it, you smart cookie you, on chimpanzees, very much so mirroring our very own world. Right out of the gate, you will likely realize that this is very different from anything we had gotten in the Planet of the Apes franchise to date. The 1968 original and 2001 remake that we really don't like to talk about sees humans arriving on a planet already dominated by apes. Like, it's done, it's over, they running the show here. We get a slight reboot when Escape sees Zira and Cornelius traveling back in time, but then we skip ahead again almost immediately another 20 years for Conquest and then even a little further for Battle, completely skipping out on almost everything that Rise covers. Even when there is some overlap, like the actual rise of the apes, it is completely different to what we see in Conquest. However, this is because these stories take place in vastly different contexts, which we'll touch on soon. So let's back up. Let's rewind a little bit, back to the beginning to see where the homages and path divergence start. It won't take very long because the DNA of the original movie is apparent from the very first scene, where we see a group of chimpanzees being hunted down by poachers, and a callback to the famous human hunting scene at the beginning of the original movie. Now, the name given to the ape that is caught, or at least the one that we follow, is Caesar's mother, and that name is Bright Eyes. Of course, this is a reference to the name that Dr. Zira gives Taylor in the original movie. After Bright Eyes is killed off, the humans discover Caesar, who will not only act as the lead of our trilogy, but is named after the main character from Conquest and Battle, who also happens to be the son of Zira and Cornelius, and the one responsible for the Ape Rebellion. That's not where the name game stops either, oh no. James Franco's character Will Rodman is named after two famous Rods that definitely came out wrong from the Planet of the Apes history. Roddy McDowall, who played Cornelius and Caesar in the original movies, and Rod Serling, who wrote the first draft of the original movie. The Ape Sanctuary owner and his son, played by Brian Cox and Tom Felton respectively, are named after Taylor's fellow astronauts in the original movie, John Landon and Thomas Dodge. In Rise, Cox goes by John Landon, just straight up steals the name, and Felton goes by Dodge Landon, combining the two last names into one name instead of just calling him Draco Malfoy, which is still what I call him to this day anyway. And I think he probably still refers to himself as that. Potter. Maurice the orangutan was named after Maurice Evans, who played Dr. Zaius in the original movie, and this character was also an orangutan. Now, let's jump back to the Landons right quick. Later in the film, Will is forced to bring Caesar to an ape sanctuary after Caesar attacks their neighbor for being aggressive towards Will's Alzheimer's-stricken father, Charles. This section of the movie features arguably the most references and the most development for Caesar as a character. And of course, this all comes after we see Caesar growing up with Will and basically being raised as a human. Now, firstly, the son, Dodge Landon, utters multiple iconic Taylor lines from the original, including, "It's a madhouse, a madhouse."
It's spherical! Spherical!
And most notably,
"Take your stinking paw off me, you damn dirty ape!"
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
The sanctuary is also where we meet Maurice, who is not only named after a previous character, as we just mentioned, but is a circus animal, which of course is in reference to the original Caesar being born in a circus and raised in the circus business by Ricardo Montalban's Armando. We also meet a gorilla named Buck, who was named after Buck Kartalian, who played numerous gorillas throughout the original movies. Numerous forms of torture that Caesar endures at the hands of the sanctuary handlers are eerily reminiscent, if not outright the same, as what Taylor goes through back in the original movie, like being sprayed down by the massive hose, for instance. This section is so important for us as an audience too, because up to this point we have primarily had our attention split right down the middle between Caesar and Will. Half of our time is spent with Will trying to cure his father through experimental drugs that he has been working on with his company, and this is also the same drug that was used on Bright Eyes, Caesar's mother, giving Caesar his superior intelligence. The other half of the movie is spent following Caesar, an ape raised by humans, half like a house pet, half like a member of the family. It is this section in the sanctuary where it feels like we almost completely forget about Will, and so much of the story is now focused on Caesar, cluing us into the fact that this was never a human story to begin with. As I just mentioned, Caesar at first is mercilessly abused by the sanctuary handlers and mistreated by his fellow primates. He is just too human for them. He wears human clothing and is used to human customs and norms. He is used to the kindness of Will, Charles, and Caroline, Will's love interest, who really is just kind of there. Being as intelligent as he is, he begins to sit back, observing, learning. First how to control the apes, then how to lead them, which of course is Caesar's entire journey. This segues perfectly into the next portion, arguably the most iconic line in any of these movies. Caesar fights back against Dodge, catching the hand that holds the baton. This is when Dodge gets to spout the line about dirty hands or whatever that is, which is then swiftly followed by Caesar's bellowing of no.
No!
Going all the way back to the third original movie, Escape, Zira recalls the story of Aldo, the first ape to rise up to humans, and funny enough, the name of the villain for the fifth movie, Battle. She tells them the first word ever uttered by an ape was no, something they were told countless times by their masters, the humans. This of course is also shown in Conquest, the fourth film, referenced as the forbidden word for humans in battle as well. With that in mind, let's stick with Conquest for just a moment, bear with me. Rise is essentially the second half of Conquest expanded into a full film set in our modern day, or at least the 2011 modern day. Conquest takes place somewhere in an alternate version of the 90s, where, as prophesized, a virus wipes out all house pets, cats and dogs alike, leading to the domestication of apes. Rise focuses on more modern-day issues, like the decades-long conversation about the ethics of animal testing, the overall treatment of animals, and animal rights. These types of tests, done for a staggeringly wide variety of products, have historically been conducted on chimps most often, as their DNA is the closest to humans without doing any actual human trials. On the human side of things, Rise really hammers home the themes of human greed, ethics of science and progress, and the hubris of humans who often believe that they can bend nature to their will without any consequences. Conquest, on the other hand, is more of a commentary on slavery and social inequality, given that the apes aren't seen merely as pets, but servants too. When they disobey or fail to meat expectations, they are savagely beaten. They are used to conduct menial tasks while wearing collars or leashes, they are not allowed to speak, and they are seen as being below humans in every conceivable way. Once again proving that the writers of Rise were expertly crafting something familiar, but putting it through a new lens for a new, more modern audience. Not that those other issues don't still persist today. Other themes that are explored, perhaps to a lesser extent, but they are definitely still there, include nature versus nurture, identity and belonging, the social hierarchy and oppression, as well as themes of parenthood, love, loss, learning what you can and can't control, and learning to let go. Of course, from the ape sanctuary onward, we all know how this plays out. Caesar manages to get a hold of the experimental drug and unleashes it on his fellow apes, giving them advanced intelligence as well, although they're still not quite as smart as Caesar. The apes escape in a game of Ape Escape, and we get the iconic showing of apes on horseback and the showdown on the Golden Gate Bridge. Caesar and his crew escape into the woods where Will and Caroline try to stop him before Caesar reveals that he is home, here in the woods, free in the forest and showing the pair that he has learned how to speak. They let him go, which takes us to our credits, where we realize the world is about to end. In terms of other references cleverly woven throughout the movie, some that can be found include Caesar working on a puzzle of the Statue of Liberty, obviously alluding to the iconic ending of the original, a news anchor talks about a missing spacecraft, the Icarus, being sent off to Mars, and fans have long since speculated and theorized that this is Colonel Taylor and his crew that we of course follow in the original movie. And Will's neighbor, who is a pilot and likely the second victim of what would go on to be known as the simian flu, after being bitten by Caesar and sneezed on too, just disgusting, by Will's co-worker who was the first victim of the virus and is then shown to have flown to both New York, the location of the first film, and Paris, France, where the original book originated from. In all likelihood, there are even more that I've missed or glossed over, so feel free to drop any of those in the comments. So now, with all of that out of the way, we can wrap things up. Going back to the criteria we were using to define the perfect reboot, I think Rise absolutely nails it. Not only does it have a plethora of tasteful references and callbacks, but it honors the story and legacy of each Planet of the Apes movie that came before it, while carving out its own legacy and a brand new path forward, never before seen in the franchise. It was set in the modern times, addressing modern issues, expressing modern ideas, and integrating more complex themes, while still being a hell of a fun and emotional watch. Fun little story time, I first saw this movie in theaters with my family and a group of friends for my 12th birthday. Yeah, we're going way back. I hadn't seen any of the other Planet of the Apes movies, besides Tim Burton's at that point. We'll leave that one off to the side. And so much of this flew right over my head, and was too intricate for me to understand, but I still absolutely loved it then. Much of the stuff discussed in this video only came to light for me personally after numerous rewatches of this trilogy, and then going back through all of the previous movies for the very first time leading up to the release of Kingdom. If you ask me, top to bottom, this movie is not only brilliant, but the definition of a perfect reboot. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments below if you agree or disagree with me on this particular topic. While you're at it, I encourage you to share your own thoughts with me. What do you think about Rise of the Planet of the Apes? What do you think of it as a movie? Do you agree with me that it is the perfect reboot? Anything you want to say, drop it down in the comments below, because I like to read and reply to all of them. As a reminder, this right here, this is the revamped BAM 2 movies, and it's your one-stop for everything movies. Be it video essays like this one, ranking videos, top 10s versus videos, tier list videos, I have it all and so much more, along with your daily nerdy news wrap-ups. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that little bell icon so you don't miss a gosh darn thing. As always, folks, I thank you all so very much for watching. Stay happy, healthy, and safe out there. From myself and the BAMTube team, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time, and that's a wrap.